Hello there and welcome. So I recently did a video saying that I wasn't convinced that constant reductions in speed limits were improving road safety. So I thought it's worth mentioning today, how do we use speed appropriately? So the first thing to mention is that when we talk about speed these days, it generally seems quite negative. And in the media we're always told that speed kills, speed is dangerous, and we must slow down. Now I think that there's a possibility that with the constant message that we have about speed, it's eroded the ability of drivers to choose speed wisely for any given circumstance. And I believe that there's probably not enough training given in use of speed. So when we train drivers to drive, whatever vehicle we're talking about, we always encourage use of a system, a structured way to drive or ride. And I've spoken about it many times before in my videos. OSM, PSL and IPSCA, the advanced system of course. Well, of course we can see that it's observe, signal, manoeuvre, position, speed, look, and information, position, speed, gear, acceleration. So choice of speed is important when negotiating hazards. So when we look at hazards, it's very important that as a driver or a rider, and I think this is equally applicable to motorcyclists, although that's my speciality, and car drivers as well. Your ability to identify and recognise and correctly assess hazards is vital. And I think this is where speed is getting its bad name from, because we are not adjusting our speed in accordance with what is actually happening. And of course, I was always trained, adjust your speed in accordance with the conditions. So the areas that we have to be careful with speed are physical features, such as bends, brows of hills, and junctions. And of course that's anywhere that we can come into conflict with another road user. Speed has a very large bearing. We also need to be very aware that the weather conditions, rain, strong winds, snow and ice, dazzling sun, they also have an impact on our choice of speed. And if we're assessing things incorrectly and using inappropriate speed for those conditions, we're likely to end up in a problem. And of course, anywhere where we are involved with other road users, our choice of speed has to be relevant. So for me, one of the biggest problems we have these days on UK roads where speed is an issue is quite potentially where a large percentage of drivers, road users, do not look far enough ahead up the road. And that lack of information and identifying hazards late is what compounds problems with speed. Because if you're travelling at very high speed, the flow of information coming into the brain gets more and more and more. So if you're an inexperienced road user, or you're just not that way inclined that your brain functions in a way that takes on board processing of information, the faster you go, the more you struggle to make sense of what is actually happening around you, and you may fail to see things, and you are equally as likely to perceive things completely incorrectly. And when you combine that with high speed, by the time something has gone wrong, you're on top of it. You can't get the vehicle slowed or stopped in time, and then we're into the situation of potential collision. And I still say this is why we should train people to drive for speed, because we need to help people, and therefore speed doesn't become so dangerous. Humans do have limits on how much information they can actually process and react to, and that will vary from person to person, and it will also vary depending on the level of training and experience you have. And we cannot expect someone who has just passed their test, having been driving for 6 months or riding for 6 months, to process the information in the same way as somebody who has undertaken several advanced driving courses, who has been trained to drive at high speed and has been driving like that for 20 years, for example. There's a gulf between the two abilities. of course you have to start somewhere, don't you, when you first go out on the road. The other issue that we have as well with speed is the human eye does not focus well. Struggles it can't in many cases at high speeds to things that are close to it. This is one reason that when we drive at higher speeds we say get your eyes all the way up the road, because you're focusing on stuff that you're going to be on top of very, very quickly. But of course in urban areas this is one of the reasons that excess speed is dangerous, or where there's a lot of things going on around you that are complex and require your attention, because you're not able to focus and make sense of what's going on. So if we reduce speeds in these situations, we can focus, we can make decisions, and we buy ourselves time to make sensible decisions based on fact. So I, like many road users, quite potentially, you know, motorcycle enthusiast, like cars, like bikes, what you might call a petrol head, I like a little bit of acceleration and I like a little bit of quickness in my ride as well. I'm not slow with everything, but I do think that knowing when to leave it out and when to get on with it is a learnt skill. It's not as simple as there's the change in speed limit, let's go. When we talk about acceleration, there's times where acceleration is unhelpful. Like now, if I was to accelerate very hard and lean the bike into the roundabout, that car there could pull out in front of me. If I come round at a sensible, steady speed, he's got time to react to me. And that's something we should always consider with use of speed. Can other road users react to my presence and my actions? You've got to be considerate about the other people. One factor that can compound reasons for collisions is that when another road user sees you, whether you'll be on your bike or in your car, it's often worse on a bike because they generally don't see you that well anyway. But a lot of people have problems judging speed and distance. And so a lot of the experience that they have is based on the norm. So in a 30 or a 40 limit, for example, they're at a junction, they look up and down the road, they may see you, they may not. If they do see you, they make an assumption that you're travelling at or within the speed limit because that's what they're used to, and they will pull out in front of you based on that information that they are used to. So if you are in fact speeding and travelling in excess of that limit, of course your closing distance is a lot quicker, they've pulled out and you've got a problem. And I don't know if you noticed there, this is what I'm talking about with reacting to other road users. That blue vehicle that was about to turn right, I watched the driver spin the wheel fairly quickly to the right and I saw the road wheels move to the right. I covered the brake because I'm thinking, you're going to pull across in front of me, aren't you? I don't understand why you've turned the wheel so quickly when it's clear there's a stream of traffic and you cannot turn. If I'd have been coming through there a lot faster and I'd have seen that, maybe I wouldn't have had the same amount of time to react. So when we do look at junctions, these are number one on the cause of collisions, as we've mentioned before. There's a lot of complex reasons for that, but if you build speed into it as a contributory factor to a collision, it's very easy to remove that. We should always anticipate a problem at a junction and consider removing the speed, even if it's our right of way. And you might think, that sounds a bit mad. Why should I? Well, you should, because if it goes wrong, you've got more a chance of stopping or dealing with the problem, and you've got more chance in the first place of the problem not arising, because the other road user has more chance to see you and react to you. So we can reduce our stopping distances very, very easily, purely by anticipating a problem, because you're going to react a lot quicker if you expect something to happen than if you didn't. And very often, my first port of call, if I'm not certain about something on the road ahead, as regards my speed, I will purely just roll the throttle off, and sometimes I may just lose a couple of miles an hour. And you might think that's insignificant. It's not insignificant. because those 2 miles an hour now mean my stopping distance has reduced already. It's like we've got a junction up here, fairly concealed by the parked vehicles. As I approach, we're in a 30 limit. I'm only doing about 24 actually. Okay, there we go, just rolling off the throttle, cover the brake. As he looked, yes, right. We reduced to 20 in that situation, considering a horn warning. As he came up to that junction, he hadn't even looked in my direction. So I'm buying myself time. It's the same with this one. I mean, there's oncoming traffic there, so that one's less likely to come out in front of me. It's just an illustration of maybe how we should be thinking, rather than just getting on with it. And so just because the speed limit is indeed 30 through here, doesn't mean I'm going to do 30. He's turning, he's waiting. 22, easing off. Now what's going to happen here? That door could open, I've got an oncoming. So the speed's off straight away. I could have just gone through there at 25 mile an hour. Don't think it would have been helpful if that guy had suddenly opened the door. See, I'm up to 30 now, a lot more road space, a lot less happening. And then as we approach things like junctions on bends and actually see vehicles moving, or if we were to have a blind view, we just knock the speed off. It's just come down to 25 there for the bend. Now in urban areas, what I don't want to be doing, I mean this bike's relatively quick, the Kawasaki's a lot quicker, I do not want to be nailing it rapidly from 10 to 30. And the reason that we don't want to use brisk, rapid acceleration in urban areas is there may be a pedestrian about to cross the road who you haven't seen. They've looked up the road, they haven't seen you, and then because you've accelerated so rapidly, you're on top of them in a blink of an eye, and there's your collision. It's different accelerating briskly when you've got a nice clear space on a dual carriageway. Sometimes that would absolutely be necessary to do so. So it should be a given then that junctions pose a risk, and we should be very considerate about the way we use speed for our own and other people's safety. Bends is another one that causes a huge problem. Now when it comes to bends, if we're trained to use limit point analysis, counter steer and do all the things we're supposed to be doing, and we shouldn't really have a problem with speed on bends. So why do we? New and inexperienced riders struggle to assess bends appropriately. And of course the golden rule for everything we do, and it does apply to bends, can I stop in the distance I can see to be clear? That governs my speed. Don't think that car in the ditch there was using limit point analysis. So I'm looking across here, I've assessed the bend, I'm using the limit point, we've covered it all on the bends video. If we approach slowly, we can exit quicker. If we go in too fast, we're going to have problems. It's important as well that when we talk about appropriate and inappropriate speed, inappropriate can sometimes be because you as the operator are just not capable of travelling around a particular hazard at that speed. So with bends, some motorcyclists most certainly can travel through bends in a way that other motorcyclists cannot. That's what we always say when you go out for a ride with your mates. Ride your own ride, don't blindly follow the guy in front. Because if you're not capable, if you can't get that bike over and you're not confident, then you're going to have a panic and then you're going to have an off. So we're now entering a 20 limit. I think they've just walked in the road with hardly looking. They're not even paying attention to the traffic now. As a driver we've got, she's on her phone, so she's not paying a lot of attention either. As motorised road users, we do have a responsibility to look out for other people as well. See, that car's already impatient, they're not off the crossing. It just takes a little bit of patience and a little bit of consideration. So this is a 20 limit. At the moment I'm sort of just over 10, I'm doing about 11-12 miles an hour. People are going to walk in the path, people are involved in other things, they're not thinking road safety, they're not thinking I might get run over by a car. There's a junction round here. So when we use speed, we've got to be trained and we have to have the mentality of using it wisely. and sensibly for everyone's benefit. Apart from being a maximum, the numbers on the signs should mean nothing. And perhaps if we could improve driverability, we wouldn't have to have so many signs with such low numbers on them. And unfortunately, we cannot trust enough road users to be responsible and sensible enough to use speed in the way it should be used. And for any of you that have been involved in an incident that has resulted in a collision, no matter, particularly where speed was involved, you know exactly. It's like here, I'm going to slow that right down because I can't see behind the bus. They are 5 miles an hour and a 20. That's what's necessary. That's what we need to do. Our door's going to open. I needed time to react because those cars are waiting. So in that situation there, you know, I could have built my speed, same with this one. You know, I'm just reducing that speed fractionally until I know exactly what's going on. Of course, if I reduce my speed massively, they are going to pull out in front of me, aren't they? Because they think I'm going to let them go. But by reducing my speed for people like that in any situation, and that'd be the same if I was on a national speed limit road at a junction. By reducing my speed, I'm giving them time to see me and time to react, because we're all human, we all make errors of judgment. Don't need to be punished for everything we get wrong, do we? Hopefully, as long as we learn by it. And similarly, I want time to react as well if they make an error of judgment. So national speed limit applies, 60 mile an hour road, got a vehicle turning there into a garden centre. But you know, weather conditions are good, visibility is good. Hazards at this exact point now are low, so 60 is fine. There we've got a bend, so we reassess, we're trying to get that view. So basically I'm constantly varying my speed depending on circumstances. And I think these days, you know, one thing we have to be very careful of is that it seems that a lot of drivers will only consider purpose of journey to judge their speed rather than conditions of the road. So we've all been late for an appointment, we all sometimes get under pressure, but that translates into your driving, of course. I must get there. Well, it's better to be 5 minutes late than dead on time, as we used to say. But life does put a lot of pressures on us these days, doesn't it? But we've got to try and overcome that and make sure that our use of speed is appropriate for all conditions and not the purpose of the journey that we're putting it to. And of course that includes everyone. That even includes emergency services. And I do remember years ago, there was a local beat car on blue lights going to a call. Went round a corner, there was a junction, and there's a car trying to pull out the junction, and a police vehicle went straight in the side of it. And we turned up, and the first thing the traffic sergeant said to the police driver was, "Did you slow down for the junction?" And they said, "No." And he said, "It's due care and attention, isn't it? You're not driving properly." No one is immune from the facts and the rules. Blue lights or no blue lights. So here we can see the national speed limit sign. We're approaching a dual carriageway, so 70 mile an hour is the speed limit. So where I can make sensible, safe, rapid progress, I will. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with it if done properly and sensibly. So I'm looking for my gap, there's the HGV. I'm going to wind it on a bit. There's nothing wrong with using speed if it's appropriate, and of course what you've just seen there, that isn't appropriate either. So when you think about forward vision, planning, stopping distances. It's like I'm going to move out the way for this one. Now another area I see that's very common for causing problems with speed is filtering. You know, if you are going to filter, don't go whizzing down the middle. It doesn't buy you any time to think or stop or do anything. Let's come through carefully so we can react, so we can see what other people are doing, and we're also giving time for other people to see us and react to us, and that's important. Of course, the other thing with good observations is you can see speed detection vans a lot earlier, which will hopefully save you a problem. So I hope that sort of use of speed awareness, if you like, has been helpful. Nobody gets it right all the time, and your definition of what is appropriate speed may be very different to somebody else's, and it is quite subjective. But the more training you can take, the more discussions you can have with experienced road users, and the more thought you give to your driving and your riding, the more likely you are to make a good informed choice about what is indeed a sensible speed for any given circumstance. So until next time, ride safe and take care.